Hello, welcome to our special Tuesday night meeting here. We're going to kick things off with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I notice that we have our interim director for Public Works, Kevin Gagne here. Mr. Gagne, our professional engineer, if you could please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, that'd be great.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Gagne. Madam Clerk, I believe we're ready to begin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 1, appointments to various city boards and committees. To approve the mayor's nominations regarding his appointments to the Housing Committee and the Planning Board. And if you will move to the agenda motion sheet, the back page or second page, if you will. For the Housing Committee, the mayor has, in your packet, has nominated for the Lewiston homeowner seat Roger Bernier. And then in addition, the mayor has emailed out over the weekend his appointment for the apartment unit owner, which is Katie Losey. And the mayor today also has a nomination for the tenant representative. And Mr. Mayor, if you have that name.
Yes, Sajia Roshingar.
Thank you. So the mayor is proposing those 3 nominations for the Housing Committee for council confirmation. Again, Lewiston homeowner Roger Bernier, apartment owner Katie Losey, and the tenant that the mayor just noted.
If we can vote on them one at a time, that would be great, Madam Clerk.
Sure, great.
We will start with Roger.
Sure, yes. The first one would be a vote for Mr. Bernier to appoint him as the Lewiston homeowner rep to the Housing Committee.
Discussion from the council. Councilor Chittum.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make clear that I will be abstaining from votes on those people that I do not know or have not had a chance to talk with. No reflection on them at all, but unless I am informed, I don't feel that I can make a good decision.
Noted. Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? I have met Mr. Bernier, received an email from him beyond the council application, and I wholeheartedly recommend that the council approve his appointment to the Housing Committee. Public comment for this nomination. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Abstain.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, Madam.
I'm sorry. The next one would be for the apartment unit owner, Katie Losey.
Yes. Discussion. Public comment for this nomination. Back to the council. Yes, she comes highly recommended, and I also encourage the council to appoint her, confirm her appointment. Further discussion or questions from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0. And the third one is the tenant representative to the Housing Committee.
Yes, Sajia Roshingar. I know her. She moved to Lewiston about a year and a half ago, resides on Main Street, and yeah, I think she would be a great fit for the Housing Committee. Any questions from the council? Public comment for this agenda item, for this nomination. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Abstain.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now to the Planning Board nominations.
Sure, Planning Board, the mayor has nominated 2 people, the first one being Lucy Bisson for the 3-year term, and the second person being Mark Roy for the 1-year term.
We'll proceed with Lucy first.
Sure.
Questions, comments from the council? Yes, Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've served with Lucy on the planning board. I would highly recommend her. Extremely knowledgeable person to rules, regulations, and all the stuff that goes on. So I would give her 2 thumbs up.
I appreciate that, Counselor. And for the public record, or for the public benefit here, she served as the chair this last term. Yes, further comments, questions? Counselor Nagy.
I would just like to reiterate what Councilor Gallant had mentioned. Lucy Basson's an excellent addition to the planning board with a lot of knowledge, so, yeah.
Public comment for this nomination. Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
And I've also nominated Mark Roy for a full seat on the planning board. Discussion from the council. I'd also like to thank Mr. Roy for coming this evening. Public. I see you brought friends, Mark. Public comment for this nomination. Back to the council. I've known Mark for a long time, wicked smart guy, and I'd be happy to have him serve on our planning board. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Abstain.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you to all the councilors, and thank you for everyone who is willing to serve on a committee. It is we appreciate your service to our city. Do we need a motion to adjourn, Madam Clerk?
Sure, that would be fine.
May I have a motion to adjourn this special meeting?
So moved.
Councilor Chittum, followed by Councilor Gallant. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That concludes our special meeting, but don't go. We have a great evening, rest of the evening planned for you, and we're kicking things off with a workshop here, presentation by RHR Smith Company regarding the city's annual comprehensive financial report for the year ending June 30th, 2023. If you two could please take your seats and introduce yourselves and kick things off, that'd be great. Madam Clerk, thank you so much.
Mayor and Council, Tracy Roy, Finance Director. This is Ron Smith from RH and Smith.
Good evening.
Just waiting for the presentation to come up. Just trying to get it to come up in one. You just click on that.
Yeah, it should be so. Does Dave know to switch over?
As she's firing this up, just to give you a little introduction about me and my company I work with. I've been doing it for 35 years, living in the world of government and nonprofit. I work with 60 other professionals. We audit 2/3 of the entire municipalities, counties, and school systems in the state of Maine and Vermont. So we know a lot about who you are, what you are, and really kind of what's going on out there in the industry. So I'm here and I'm very fortunate enough to be here and look forward to answering any questions you guys have tonight.
You want to start that piece and then-
So you're required annually in the state of Maine to have an annual independent audit. We actually do 2 audits. We do a financial statement audit for the city and the school department, and we also do something called the federal compliance audit because you all spend more than $750,000. And I understand that a lot of you are new to those chairs up there, so I'm not going to go into 132 pages of depth of this financial, but I think we've prepared a presentation that hits the highlights of all of them to give you a flavor to understand Lewiston, the Lewiston School Department, and really kind of where you financially landed, and and ask any questions, please.
So we're going to go over the general fund revenues. These are found under Statement 6 on page 48. Just touching upon what was budgeted and what was actual. As you can see, our real estate taxes came in at $39,802 over what was budgeted. This is from the tax liens for the 2021 and 2022. That is the bulk of the increase of the overage. Due to that, we start to do our tax liens. That's when individuals get their 30-day notices, and then their 45-day notices for foreclosure. So we tend to see an increase of payment of taxes to make sure that they don't get foreclosed on. Excise tax was $841,162 over what was budgeted. We had 381 more vehicles registered in fiscal year 23 than we did in 22. For license and permits, it was over budgeted by 380. Well, we received more money revenue than was budgeted, $389,821. That was due to a large amount of permits coming in. We had 2 big ones, Picker House lofts on 2 Cedar Street. That brought in $103,793. And we had the solar energy project at 268 Old Webster Road that brought in $66,000. On the charges for services, that was over $67,659. Fines came in over budget by $253,615. These were mainly code violation fines that made it come over. And then interest, rents, and royalties came in over budget, $1,127,820. This was due to $967,000 over budget on our investments. We budgeted conservative, not knowing where the interest rates were going to go. We had a lot of CDs that matured at low interest rates, and we went out 2 to 3 years CDs with 5.4 or higher. So we saw a larger return in our investments in fiscal year 23. Miscellaneous is $139,302. This is due to the city has procurement cards. We purchase things with procurement cards, and we get a rebate at the end of the fiscal year. So using the purchasing card, we got $18,000 back in rebates, along with some May municipal dividends. And then our transfer-ins, $171,878. These are the portions of workers' comp and unemployment for our grants, like our CDBG accounts, along with the utility. I don't know if Ron has anything to add before we move over to the expenditure side, or if there's any questions?
This is the primary government, and one of the things is and I'm not sure what normal is ever going to be after COVID, but a lot of the things that you don't see, and that's why I kind of flipped to hop in, to correspond with Tracy, is probably the tune of about $35 to $40 million of other money that comes into the city of Lewiston for various grants, contracts, and other agreements that you have out there. And it's important to bring that up now, particularly for the school department, because they're able to mitigate some of their general operating expenses with some of these COVID, relief funds that we're still seeing out there. So, and what we're starting to see now in the trend of government is that the normalcy is looking different, and the revenue streams are starting to dry up, and whatever normal is going to look like, I'm not sure it's going to look for Lewiston like it did before March of 2020. I don't think it's ever going to look at that, but we're seeing these large windfalls and see a lot of these, they're drying up now. And I think that, I'm not going to say it's the last of it, because I would have said that back in 2008, before COVID, when we had the ERA stimulus funds, and I saw a lot of programs come and go, during that era. I think that there's going to be a lot of programs now, but our state's got over $2.5 billion over the next 3 years to spend for infrastructure needs, and we're seeing that come and being delivered to local government and schools in a lot of different ways from a lot of different agencies right now. So that's the one thing you really don't see as a slide, is another $35 to $40 million that's come in either to the city or to the school department, for other various things, to really kind of like mitigate, and provide other additional services for the city of Lewiston. And, I'd say that. And the last thing that I would say, and, just to kind of put context, $8 million out of $160 million is 6%. That's not a lot. When you're running $160 to $170 million through government, that's not a lot of money, and I'll certainly end it on that note, so.
So next, we're going to go over the general fund expenditures. And the general government was under budgeted $172,368. This was due to our IT department at MIS department. Their maintenance came in under, due to Keystone, which we used to have, we no longer have, that was budgeted, and then some other softwares that came in under what they originally projected. On public safety, the expenses came in under budget, $142,102. This was due to their miscellaneous service, gas and oil, and their training coming in under budget. The public works came in under budget, $343,138. That's mainly, we had a milder winter than was projected and had a savings of $59,000. Street lighting, we had a saving of $49,000. And municipal garage, we had a saving of $195,000. The next department is human services came in, of course, over budget, $862,452. And you saw the revenue in the state revenue sharing was up. The governmental revenue was up. That was due to the 70% that we get reimbursed. So when we go over this line, we're also go over on the revenue line that we budgeted. That was due to their rents came in at $760,000 over what they had budgeted, and their food came in $114,700 over what was budgeted. Their temporary housing came in under, so therefore that difference is the $862,452. Recreation came in under $6,478. Library came in at under $19,413. Intergovernmental is $1.
I'm interested in that one. Could you go over that one a little bit?
Education came in under $15,780,000. That is due to the debt being budgeted under the transfer out. So they don't have a surplus of $15 million. It's the way we record it. It's in the transfer out their debt. Miscellaneous is $8,592,000. Miscellaneous includes debt, which we were under budget $33,000 because we did not go out to bond in fiscal year '23. So we had that savings. Reserve salaries is under that miscellaneous. We had a savings of $308,000. Workers' comp is under there. Municipal dues and donations, tax sharing, and then other supplies, training, and equipment is under there. So there was a savings. The transfer out, as I mentioned, is our debt, the school debt, and then the Lewiston Mill Redevelopment Corporation is also under there. And that is it for me. Do you have anything additional?
No, I don't. I think you covered it pretty much with human services and really kind of, that one being over budget, but your revenue's coming in over budget to mitigate that number with brackets on it.
Director Roy, on the previous slide, you had a $1 difference in intergovernmental, and we didn't talk about intergovernmental on the revenues, which showed, I think, about a $5 million. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yep. Let's see, just need to.
There you go.
Sorry, I missed that one. Intergovernmental revenues were over $5,349,930. That was due to our state revenue sharing, came in 4.1 million higher than what we had budgeted. We budget that conservative because we don't know what we're actually, even though they estimate what they're gonna give to cities and towns, it's not a definite. So we always budget conservative on that side to cover that. And then, of course, general assistance came in $863,760 higher. That's that difference of the 70% of the expenses. And then the school state subsidy came in $431,000 over for the in-governmental.
So this 5.3 million is essentially all state of Maine revenue sharing?
The bulk of it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and I'm sorry for missing that one. Do we have any other questions before we move on? And I'll let Ron go from here.
Yeah, so here's what we like to do. We like to give you a comparison, from year to year, so you kind of see where you land, from year to year, and you see, with the exception of the unassigned fund balance, you can kind of see the restrictions and assignments, and there's a description of what they are. But anything that's not named unassigned, has a typical purpose for it. And for example, the restricted that you see of $17.8 million in 2023 is predominantly the school carryover balance at the school department. So obviously, we're not going to roll that into the city's $26 million. So that's earmarked for school operations, and there's a statute that says once education stays education until it's voted so differently. So, and then the $23 million, that you have of assignments is just a various other depiction, and I actually had the page open, here a second, workers' compensation, unemployment, compensated absences, and the big one, as I recall, is future expenditures for the city, encumbrances, monies that's been earmarked for future projects that you have down the road that's either got, perhaps a debt piece of principal associated to it, other earmarked revenues that you have in-house already, but they're committed to future projects at the city. And then the unassigned is $26 million. And I believe that the correlation to that is that you have, and we'll talk about it here in a second in a few more slides, but the correlation to that is the city has a policy that dictates 8 to 12% of your operating revenues that you come into. So that's the number that there. It's a little stronger than what that percentage is. We'll talk about that in another slide. So, yeah. So, and a lot of the increase, $13.1 million from the prior fiscal year, a lot of that was virtually committed, to future projects at the city. So. And this is the city and school analysis. It's kind of like a graph, to show you, really kind of what's gone, up, from down measured in, thousands, which is really, that's millions, that you have, right there. So as far as this graph, I think the one tells a little bit better of a story with the fund balance analysis. We like to put the graph in, the city typically puts it in, so it can show like a trend, and you can see your trend is going upwards with your fund balance analysis for the city and school. I think the real conversation is the one slide ago that breaks down that fund balance.
That might be more instructive if that were broken out into school and city.
Yeah. So I think that there's a slide that's going to help us here. I think so. And I could be wrong. So let me just take a look here and just look. I've got a page in this that I can have this conversation with. I'm actually looking at it right now. So, and I thought that we put a slide in here. Okay, so I apologize there's not, but if you got questions, I'd be more than happy to direct you to the page, in your financial statements that does exactly what you just said. 45 and 46 really tell that picture with a comparative of kind of like the school to the city.
Thank you.
This right now is, and I'm not going to get into a guessing game, so I'm going to give you the answer here in a second, but there's one difference that you're going to see from three of your other counterpart cities that we put up there for kind of a comparative, thing that I said I would talk to you about 2 slides ago that I'm going to talk about now. But there's kind of a comparison of where you landed to some of your counterparts, your neighbor across the bridge, Augusta, Portland, some of the counterpart cities, of the equivalent and, in size of the city of Lewiston, and here's what I always say about this slide. Don't pay attention to your counterparts. Be true to who Lewiston is, and Lewiston is Lewiston. And I always like to say, maintain your identity and don't go watch, brother municipality, sister municipality. Don't go financial watch. Don't do it. It never ends well. And that's what I'll tell you from 35 years of experience. Stay true to who you are, and that's what you've always done. So true, if you look at that as kind of like a fund balance comparison, you'll see one big difference, between Lewiston and the others is that they use the benchmark of what they spend as opposed to what they bring through the door. And that's always worked for Lewiston, okay? And for whatever other reason it works for the other municipalities, and that's why I say, don't go compare yourself to other people. If you want to talk shop on how to provide a service, that's a good conversation. But as far as what the details look like, you look different than those cities, and there's a reason why. So I always say, that this is an important side to kind of look around and say, what do other people have? But stay true to who you are, and I think that that's the big difference. There's just something up there to a comparison that you can look and see where other people land, and and certainly Lewiston is, as far as the totality of its fund balance, is that you are right there, within the top 4 cities of the state of Maine.
Inquiring minds would like to know what we would look like if we looked at the expenditures.
What you would look like, so we can talk about that. There's a few different variables, and I'll tell you why. You got a school department, okay? I believe, with the exception, I know Portland does, I know Auburn does. Does Augusta got its own
Expenditures.
school department? I know they got expenditures, but is that a municipal school
It's
department?
municipal.
Yeah.
It's municipal.
So that's usually the wild card out there. And here's the other wild card is utility districts. This is just your general operating, budget. So typically what they try to use is the consumer indexing that's set every year for inflation, okay? What's inflation based on? What we're gonna spend, okay? So that's what a lot of people try to tie it into. Lewiston's, traditionally done revenues for many reasons, but the reasons are identified and unique to Lewiston. So that doesn't make you wrong, but as far as what the, kind of what the benchmark is, I don't have what that math looks like, but I'd be more than happy to work with, to Tracy to give you the
Out
math.
of curiosity, I'd like
Sure.
to see, are we at 6%, are we at 30%?
Yeah, you're gonna be as equal. Okay, I've already done the math in my head quickly by looking at this. You'll be at that percentage, if not a little bit stronger, I believe.
That's what I thought.
So, yeah. Here's an interesting one, and this is why I say it's pretty tough to compare you to other people because, like I say, all we're seeing is just a picture of government. We're not seeing what else runs through government. We're not seeing their utility districts like water, wastewater, stormwater, so that really, like I say, stay true to who you are. But this is an interesting one because next to debt itself, one of the biggest obligations that the city has is benefits for workers' compensation and claims that you have to pay for that. And right now, the estimation is that you need about $7.1 million to put away and set aside for those claims. And you have about $1.7 million, so you're short of that benchmark by almost $5.5 million. The good news is it went down a little bit from the year before. The bad news is it's $5.5 million. And that is the equivalent of almost 20% of your entire fund balance. So here's what I'm not gonna tell you, don't go take that money and reserve it. That's I think it's something to be real and aware of. We've been talking about it for the past 4 years since I've been coming and doing presentations, for our company. It's real, we're making you aware of it, and we're telling you that that's probably your second biggest liability next to debt itself at the city of Lewiston. So, and am I concerned about it? No. I'm not. It's just a matter of how you do business. And I would say probably the biggest reason why that number is where it's at isn't because of the city, it's because of the school department. So, and that again is why you don't want to compare yourself to other municipalities. So just because of the different dynamics of government. But that's a little bit of history behind that number.
The city of Lewiston is self-insured for workers' compensation?
Correct.
When was the last time we looked at joining the workers' comp insurance pool?
I would defer to Heather, do you remember?
We considered that probably, we reevaluated it maybe 15 years ago. It's been a while. The biggest issue that we have is our rating with our experience rating is going to make it more difficult and challenging. We're going to pay significant premiums for that. And at least with being self-insured, the good years that we have, we benefit directly from that, whereas we will never get a benefit directly from the state. We do have an upside limit where third-party insurance will kick in on those high-cost claims, but the bulk of it right now has been an increase in the school department.
But looking at these numbers, it would seem to me that we have a fairly good claims experience. If we're looking at 7.1 million as the recommended pool for workers' compensation, and we're getting by on 1.3 and 1.7 million, that would suggest that we have a very good claims record.
Not compared to prior years. When I look at it from a longer trend, it has grown. So what that 7 million is the actuarial valuation of future claims. So if you stop the city right now and we had no more claims, that's the future value of the claims that are on their books now. We only have 1.7 to pay for that. That's that gap. So part of what we do when we internally budget for workers' comp, we assign workers' comp rates to both the utility funds, the school departments, CDBG, and so forth. We include essentially an overhead or a reserve charge on top of that. So that has grown over the year as that reserve gap has increased. So it gives us more money to put towards that gap in future years. However, if we have a spike in claims that particular year, we may lose that gap altogether.
It's a risk.
Always is.
Thank you.
And there's certainly other options, and I think if it gets to the point where you want to kind of see where those options, I'd be more than happy to get to it with Heather and Tracy and, kind of go over that. But I think that the option that was presented as far as joining another risk pool, I don't think that one would be at the top of my list for the city of Lewiston. I just don't, just knowing what I know about the profession and knowing 20 years ago I saw when we had a lot of these unfunded pension obligations, a lot of people decided to go bore and bang, everything got refinanced through the main state retirement system. That was a bad decision by a lot of governments back then. And, and that's why I say I think you got other options that you can look at, certainly. And if it gets to the point after the dust settles on all the infrastructure needs that you guys are kind of like mitigating and trying to work through here right now, that might be something to take a look at, but, I don't see it really as pressing right now. And everybody worries about debt, and certainly it's a real number. There's statutory math, that really kind of sets the debt ceiling. For any municipality in the state, there's some extenuating factors, education being one of them, that's factored into that. But I really don't see any concern with your debt portfolio and kind of like the trends and what you kind of see compared to other cities. And this is really one of the ones where you don't want to compare yourself to somebody else. Okay, don't compare Let me just do some just quickness here. Don't compare the Maine's largest city that sits on the ocean, and is one of the main hubs for transportation to the second largest city in the state of Maine. Don't do it. Don't do it. Bad things are going to happen. So like I say, I'm not worried about your debt. I don't think that you're close to your debt ceiling. Like I say, with the school department and kind of its debt portfolio on its own, there's nothing really that strikes me, out there that says, boy, this is probably something we ought to be doing. And the good news is the city traditionally goes out and finances its own debt, so you can have the ability to refinance your debt at some point in time, and that's something the city has always traditionally done, is certainly be very proactive when it came time to savings, but I'm not sure there's any good deals on the public market out there right now when it comes to borrowing, so.
I mean, basically, that's an IOU. We have somebody who's hurt today who lives to age 900. I mean, the means that you're talking about, similar to what Bath Shipyard does, is you can buy those out, possibly, whether the debt comes off, is that correct? I mean,
Yeah, so a lot of times, and really, and Heather's here, and she can tell me how close I am to this. You have a lot of infrastructure. You've got a lot of utilities that you run here, that's supposed to pay for themselves. But we all know how that works, and we all know that there's debt associated with those utility departments too. Really, at the end of the day, the planning's going to be it's almost like we talk about capital planning and and your fund balance planning, but the planning really is a debt retirement plan. As debt falls off, usually there's something that's going to be there to replace it because of your capital plan, and that I think is something that the city of Lewiston has always done, always. So.
Councilor Glant, I received a message from the university. If you can use your microphone, that would be great. Please continue.
That's all I have for that question.
Is there any more questions? This ends the slideshow. Were there any more questions?
That's the end of the show?
Yes.
Well, okay. Are we going to have another opportunity to talk about the way Lewiston structures its debt? I know that we've got in my experience, somewhat unusual policy that we can only issue 80% of the average retired debt over the past 3 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are we going to have an opportunity on this council to examine that and look at all of its ramifications?
Just for the public's benefit, so yes, that policy is in effect, but that can be overridden. Is that by supermajority, Administrator Hunter?
That's correct.
Yes.
But to answer, Mr. Mayor, if I could, to answer Councilor Chittum's question, if you want to workshop that policy, we can most definitely workshop that. Just, I'll put it on the tickler file for that. You will also get an opportunity to revisit that during any one of the LCIP public hearings, your LCIP adoption night, as well as in June when we actually go to authorize the debt. So you will have plenty of opportunities to ask additional questions about that.
Okay, thank you. I certainly don't want to impose this on other councilors. I'm a weedy kind of guy, and I like to look at all of the details. And this 80% rule would tend to drive us to no debt at all. If we kept it up indefinitely, we wouldn't be allowed to take out any debt unless we had supermajorities to override that 80% policy each fiscal year. So I think it's worth looking at.
And I'm more than happy to play any role that you want me into that. And I think that those are words of wisdom, because I think if you were going to look into debt, there are opportunities that we'll never see in our generation coming in the next 2 or 3 years for infrastructure. We are trying to build back America great again, and there's money we haven't seen yet, and if that means that Lewiston can go access money for 10 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, I think it's going to be tough to see that. And if that means borrowing to get that money or using some of your carryover fund balance number to do that, that would be just a good conversation to have. So, and whatever role that you want me to play, and I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Anything else, Director Roy?
That is it, unless you have any other questions.
Further questions from the council? Thank you both so much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, pleasure.
We're now going to hear from Lewiston Housing. Are we hunting for an easel, or?
I'm sorry?
Are we hunting for an easel?
Yeah, they're gonna, but they can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
We have to put it because of the camera angle.
If you three could introduce yourselves and then proceed when ready.
All right, my name is Silas Lovett, and I'm the Development Project Manager with Lewiston Housing Authority.
Jesse Thompson, Kaplan Thompson Architects.
I'm Craig Saddlemeyer. I serve on the board of the Lewiston Auburn Area Housing Development Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Lewiston Housing.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you very much for speaking with us today. We are here to talk about the future plans for the current 61 Ash Street parking lot, seen there. As you know, LHA/Lahaddick owns the majority of the block between Ash, Pine, Park, and Bates Streets. The portion of the lot alongside Pine Street is already slated for development for the DeWitt project, but we've long considered the rest of the block suitable for mixed-use development and mixed-use housing. We consider the possibilities afforded us by 61 Ash, 104 Park, and the other lots on the block a kind of a choice 2.0, since DeWitt is part of the original choice grant. And we wanted to ensure public participation in the development of the planned units on site. So we're here today to discuss our current preliminary vision for the site with you and talk about the best direction in which to proceed. So our project goals are as follows. We want to expand redevelopment of the block, starting with 61 Ash Street as phase 1, and eventually adding additional housing above and behind 104 Park Street, the former Sun Journal building. We want to create more needed mixed income housing, and we want to maximize use of the site for mixed-use community benefit. And lastly, we want to continue to meet goals from the city's neighborhood transformation plan. And I'm going to pass it over to Craig to talk more about the specific transformation plan goals and the public participation plan that we've been following.
Thank you, Silas. So, first of all, briefly, a little bit more about my role with the Lewiston Auburn Area Housing Development Corporation. So I live on Maple Street in Lewiston in Ward 5, and I was appointed by Healthy Neighborhoods, which is a group of community stakeholders that principally concerned with the downtown residential neighborhood. But I was appointed to the board of Lahaddick to bring community perspective to the housing development projects that group is taking on. I've also been involved in other capacities, primarily with the organization that I work for, the Raise Up Housing Cooperative, in community efforts such as the Choice Neighborhood Transformation Plan, which some of you I know are very familiar with. Some of you it may be more of a new subject, but it's a plan to revitalize the Tree Street neighborhood. I'd say that, along with the comprehensive plan for the 15 years or so that I've been involved in local government, were really exemplary public processes that involved a lot of input from a lot of different residents and community stakeholders and local businesses, et cetera, and developed a series of really valuable goals. And the way this relates to the Choice Neighborhood Project is we see it as an expansion upon goals that were already set. So in a moment, I'm gonna mention some of the goals that this particular project is looking to meet, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about our public process timeline. But what I want to make sure is clear is that this public process, what we're doing with it, is we're already trying to meet stated goals in the plan. So with our process, we're not trying to reinvent anything in the plan. We are just starting with goals that are already established in the Choice Neighborhood Plan, and then seeking additional public input on some of the components where there's opportunity for input with regards to this project at 61 Ash. So it looks like the formatting came out a little funny here, but at any rate, Goal 2.1 and 2.2 are with regards to gateway beautification and safety. So for those of you who are familiar with this site, it's basically a large windswept surface parking lot. It's a place that a lot of folks, I walk by it regularly because I need to for my regular walking route to and from work and other places, but it's not a very enjoyable place to walk through. And it is a significant gateway for people coming down Ash Street. This is one of the things they see as they start to enter the downtown. It's also, and this starts to get into Goal 2.3 with regards to safety, walkability, and traffic calming. It is a high crash location that's been studied a number of different times. It's a high crash location.
Oh, right, yeah.
So that intersection that borders 61 Ash is an area where we've had a lot of vehicle accidents. It's been looked at a number of times. We have yet to implement much in the way of tangible change at that intersection to address public safety. But we also, beyond just making it safer, we could make it a much nicer place to walk, a much nicer space to look at as you're driving by it. And so this project offers a lot of opportunity, I think, for the city to consider what improvements can be made at that intersection. Goal 4, this is one of the primary things we're doing with this project, is growing the inventory of new healthy housing. Under Goal 5.3A, and the page numbers are referencing the transformation plan itself for folks who want to read into the detail. So this is an opportunity to really improve land use. Again, right now it's an underutilized surface parking lot. This is an opportunity to not only add housing, but add commercial use, increase tax revenue, increase the visibility and the attractiveness of the space, and just in general get more value out of a prime important downtown real estate lot. And then 6.6, it's an opportunity. It's pretty much almost entirely hardscape right now, and this is an opportunity to add trees, to add some green space, and contribute to the tree canopy of the city. Next slide.
Can you briefly, for my education, explain what healthy housing is?
Healthy housing is, it's housing where people can live and their health is ideally not negatively impacted by the housing, and preferably it is enhanced by the housing. So a really clear example, which is something we've been dealing with for a while, is the amount of lead in our housing. We have for a long time, and it's probably still the case, I haven't seen the latest report, but Lewiston Auburn has had the highest rate of elevated lead levels in children under the age of 6. So we have housing that's been, literally poisoning the brains of our kids for many years. Replacing that with lead-free housing is one example of healthy housing.
So this is literally then environmentally healthy housing?
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, now just one other example I'll give is air quality. A lot of housing that is not well maintained can end up having substantial mold issues. So, you can achieve this with renovation or new construction, but we also just have a supply issue, so we need new housing. And the quality of the housing that we will build, it will both be lead-free, and these units will have very high air quality that will reduce rates of asthma for the residents living in them, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yep. So thank you. That was a great question. Thank you. So with regards to our planning timeline, in December we presented to the planning board. Tonight we're presenting to the city council. In February we're going to be reaching out to certain stakeholder focus groups. Healthy Neighborhoods is one of those groups that we will be meeting with. We've also reached out to the Downtown Lewiston Association, so an association of downtown businesses and other organizations. to get their input on this project. It'll be a similar presentation, but customized a bit to their needs. In late February, we're going to have a final public meeting. We believe it will be at the Lewiston Library. We'll announce the date once we have that confirmed. And then in March is when design begins, and May and June will come back for the actual planning board review process. And what I'm highlighting here is basically items 1 through 4 are all sort of voluntary, adding our own public outreach process to this development, which is a bit unique. For usually housing developments get announced once things are in place, and we're starting the public conversation a ways before that happens. So at this point, I think I'll turn things over back to Silas.
Yep. And the final element of the timeline is currently based on how our perception of the performance looks is we're going to be submitting to the 9% low-income housing tax credit application round with Maine Housing. So that's a pre-application that's due in July, and then the full application is due in September. If for some reason between now and then we decide that the 4% program would work better from a funding perspective for this project, we then would be submitting to the 4% funding round in December. So I'm just going to move on to kind of talking about the site and our general housing goals. So this is the existing site. The zoning is Centerville District zoning. It's currently only used for surface parking. The 104 Park rear site, kind of in the middle of the block, is currently used for light manufacturing by Bags LLC. Furthermore, LHA is planning on moving our administrative offices and additional tenants like CoLab and Goodwill to the vacant Sun Journal offices at 104 Park Street. I also wanted to note, just as a general thing, that this phase of development, the 61 Ash Street parking lot, will not impact Bags LLC and where they are, but we are planning to include them in future phases of development, since the goal of this project for us is housing plus and not just housing by itself. This slide shows our overall housing goals for the site. Though Phase 1 development of 61 Ash Street, it would only contain between 64 and 72 units. We could conceivably have between 100 and 300 units in successive phases. It depends on the design process. It depends on the public participation process that we're going through now. But that is an example of what we could be putting on the site. There's different types of unit mixes we could have. Jesse, in a moment, is going to walk through some of the different scenarios that we've laid out for Phase 1, including our preferred scenario. But in general, we could build a mix of senior housing, single adults housing, family housing. It depends on what we feel like the community need is and what the community feels like the community need is. And for this Phase 1 project, we're also targeting it being a mixed income. So that would be 80% LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit, and 20% market rate. And I'm going to pass it over to Jesse now, who's going to talk through our different phases. And I guess I will move the things.
Yeah.
I have a question first. And you're gonna get, I noticed, I looked ahead about the phases, and maybe I should hold my question till then, but what is the mixed income? I know seniors right now are struggling to get into housing because they make too much. A recent increase in Social Security, it bumped a few of them to the market where they might have to remove themselves from programs. You know, when you say seniors, and I have near and dear to my heart being a senior, I'm curious to where we're gonna be with that. And I see your Phase 1, but I'm just a little concerned that their incomes may already overprice them from getting into the units.
Yeah, right now in the kind of preliminary performer we have, the LIHTC units are, I believe, 60% area median income. If we apply for federal home loan Bank of Boston AHP money, which we probably will in the summer, that necessitates a split so that some of the units will have to be 50% area median income, and then the market rate units will be market rate, and that will depend on a market study showing what the market rate is for those types of units in Lewiston at this moment, at the moment the study is performed. I believe for one bedrooms, it's something like 1,100, but I'm not 100% on that. I'd have to double check.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you all. Really happy to be here. We're the architects currently for the Wedgwood project, which is under construction in the Tree Streets. And we've also been working on the DeWitt project, which is hopefully going up on the park pretty soon. You know, maybe this fall might start construction. So we're pretty thrilled to be contributing to Lewiston like this. It's a great city to be in. Happy to be here tonight.
Can I interrupt you for a second? So the camera is right now focused on the slideshow. And then can we, if the camera will not be on that, can we see those?
Yeah, I think.
Or
Are they all in there, Craig?
Are they
Or
all-
I'm not sure.
are they all in the slide?
Most of them are, but I'm
What-
not
I'm
sure
sorry,
the
what's that?
overall location map is.
The location map was in your packet. So
Okay,
your
they're-
paper packet reference is the same thing, and so if we start with the first one that's in your packet, maybe that echoes the board. And that was really just to make sure people could locate themselves in the city. And so the orange dot shows that page. And these slides were really, just that location of what we're talking about in Lewiston. And then I think it is worth flipping to the next in your packet. And Craig, I think it's the second board, if you don't mind just swapping.
Yeah, we're good now. Thank you.
Yep. This is a little closer location map. And I think Silas and Craig both talked about this, but there's this tremendous opportunity here in your downtown that I think everyone sort of understands. We used to have downtown buildings everywhere there's a parking lot in Lewiston. 150 years ago, these were full of buildings. And we kind of tore them down in the 50s and 60s. And maybe the buildings were run down. Maybe we had a different mood about what should be in downtown. But I think we're in this really interesting moment where we are starting to rebuild our downtowns like they honestly were in the 1800s in a fascinating way. One thing that we are not promising with this, but we just want to put as a possibility on your second page is we're close to being able to rebuild a green walking path from Kennedy Park up, and this leads to your municipal parking garage across to Ash. And the Sun Journal printing press building is right in the middle of all this, and it's currently a well-used building. It has a manufacturing company that's doing great. There's no plan to remove that building. All we're trying to point out to the city council, who's responsible for the long-term vision of the city, is that inch by inch, piece by piece, it might be possible to rebuild this. The DeWitt project is holding open that gap, and there's a bit of a plaza and a small park. We're not trying to, that project's not trying to overshadow your grand park, your big park, but there's a little plaza, place to sit. And then over time, with LHA ability to do projects on this site, it might be possible to rebuild this. And it's just this sort of great vision that, we're not promising this project will do this. It's more, this project is thinking, it's trying not to stand in the way, perhaps, of that. The federal government owns the post office. That is going to be a federal government site for all eternity. And there are trucks that move in and out from there. So there's always going to be reasonably large truck traffic from the post office, unless the federal government was to relocate the post office. I don't expect that. But it will be a downtown corridor. There will be movement there. But it's just how to locate what we're proposing. We're trying to think through those aspects of the city and coming along.
Mr. Thompson, what's that thin orange line to the west of the green space?
Oh, that is, it's really just an echo of the other line. I think there are some utility corridors in there. There's sort of power and other utilities that come, especially to the old Sun Journal building pieces where sort of you can't put buildings on top of them. I think that's really all that was. The next slide, I think, is perhaps the most important to focus on, which is the street plan. And at a high level, it shows our early stage thinking. And like Silas and Craig said, we said design starts in March. This is essentially the barest sketch of a building. And that's what we wanted to, essentially, our client asked us to not do too much. Just do just enough to start the conversation, bring it to planning board, bring it to city council, bring it to the citizens of Lewiston. Don't design a building, like, show everyone what it looks like. Instead, get a chance to say how it works, how it fits the city. And so what you're looking at here is a building sketch, the orange, blue, and colors, that is essentially a building that's trying to follow the old downtown rules of how we build buildings in downtowns. It's close to the sidewalk. It's not pushed back from the street. You can walk along the sidewalk and rock in a door, and you can walk in a store, perhaps, or you can walk in to a lobby to your apartment. And so the building is along Bates and along Ash. In the back, where it's a sunny southern-facing side, we're saying there could be a bit of green space. Perhaps it's a pocket park. Perhaps it's a place that if you live here, there's picnic tables. You could have a kid's birthday party in the summer. It's a place to go outside, out in the back. And we're proposing there's just room for some car parking in the back. And so we've got a set of car parking spaces. We'll have to have accessible car parking spaces. If you had a disability, you can't walk very far. This is not very much car parking shown. This project proposes to use the municipal parking garage and other municipal parking lots for car parking for residents. That there is, we feel, a good amount of other car parking spaces within a block or 2 blocks of here. And this project shouldn't try to supply more. Essentially, there's room for apartments or car parking, but probably not both. And we're going towards apartments. The other thing on this, before we get into the exact building, is this is a sketch of an improved street. And what you're looking at here is there's an orange line in your packet which shows where the curb of the road is currently. It's a little faint, probably. So that's where the current curb is if you were to walk down the street. And what we're proposing is that we think we can maintain and actually increase the on-street parking. We can get more parking on the street of Ash. And we can also extend the sidewalk out, like is being done over at DeWitt, to get the sidewalk closer to the other side. So when you're trying to cross Ash, you aren't trying to get across essentially almost 4-lane widths. You're down to maybe 2 lanes. So if you are elderly, you don't walk very quickly, you can get safely from street to street. You can get to your car that's parked somewhere else. And so this is a proposal to essentially continue the street improvements that are being done down on Pine and Park as part of the DeWitt project. That's improving sidewalks and curbs and rechanging some parking spaces. But the other goal is to make sure there are on-street car parking spaces for folks who are visiting the proposed commercial area. So if there's stores, restaurants, coffee shops that you can park your car, pop in and out quickly, do those things that you do in a city, and maintain that. And then the green is showing a proposal to add street trees, add bike parking, bike racks along the street, the sort of things that a good sidewalk has. It has a little bit of green space. It has a sidewalk that's set back from the cars so you can walk safely. And it really is nothing too creative. It's just trying to sort of follow that pattern that Lewiston's been rebuilding as it's rebuilding its streets whenever it has a chance. And this is a chance to do works. We are, I think the planning board made note that Public Works is setting their budget right about now. And it's the kind of thing that again, this public outreach is to make sure Public Works knows that here's a possible improvement. Maybe they could budget for this over the next couple of years. It's a thing of, who pays for things is always a critical question. It is more, again, this is a discussion point that everyone wanted to bring forward. So it's a suggestion of a possible streetscape improvement, and then we sketch that all the way down the block, even though this project is really only touching a corner. But it's just sort of take the chance for this project to just talk about how Ash could be better, how Bates could be better in that neighborhood as Lewiston steadily improves itself. So that is everything except the building. The building itself, we're going to show you some options that the client asked us to prepare that we've come up with. One of the big differences is 2 of the schemes show a certain amount of commercial space, and then the last one shows a little bit less commercial space. But what we thought was the best piece as we talked as a group was that commercial space be on Ash. That's a commercial corridor. It's a busier road. It feeds right to Lisbon Street. And that if there are shops and storefronts or perhaps a Bags Inc. moves into this space, that is the place that is the best place for people who are walking to retail, commercial, restaurants, et cetera, and that Bates should be a quieter street. It should be, if you live here, you come in and off Bates. And so the lobby and if you live here, your home is that red triangle. You're coming in on the side on Bates into that yellow-orange lobby. Elevator in the middle. And then the blue is things that go along with the apartment building, residential functions. There's an office for whoever manages this building. There is a laundry if you live here, mechanical room. And then in the back, in the elbow, is a community room. So this is a community space for educational events, trainings, birthday parties, gatherings. Some facilities might have religious services in them. It's the kind of space that gets used in apartment buildings. You can rent it yourself or or reserve it. And we're putting that on the private backside is where we've suggested that is. So that's that L-shaped space. And then let's see, this first option, I gotta keep track of the Silas. We are proposing a family. The way the state of Maine's subsidy funding works is it's very competitive, and they give certain points for certain things. And so if you provide a certain kind of family housing, you get 8 points. If you propose a certain kind of senior housing, you might get 8 points. And so those points are so competitive that you need to align your project with what the state is saying the biggest need is in whatever that category is. So we've done one of several scenarios. One is a family housing, which we were able to provide 68 apartments, and that's a mix of, is it 1, 2, and 3 in this first scheme? Or
The first one is just the ones and
ones and twos, right? Okay, thank you, Saz. The first scheme is 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. So small families, singles, couples, not necessarily 3 and 4 bedroom in this scenario. It's a 5-story building. So this is about the size of the buildings. It's the same height as what's proposed at the DeWitt project. So almost identical size. Those are 5-story buildings. Okay, that makes sense. Here's a 5-story building. We've got other 5-story buildings in the neighborhood. It seems like a reasonable scale for other things that were here historically. There's 6- and 7-story buildings not too far away. It felt like a reasonable scale. And then there is there are some market rate apartments and some LIHTC. So next slide, I think.
just shows the.
This shows the upper level. And it's this is this basic bare concept sketch of a mix of 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms. 2 bedrooms at the corner where you have more light around your bedrooms or in the windows, and 1 bedrooms. And then that's a typical floor. So that's option 1. Option 2 is a senior housing building. And so this, a senior housing is typically smaller apartments. Really all 1 bedrooms, honestly, is quite common in senior buildings. And so apartments are smaller. We were able to get up to 72 apartments. And we were able to maintain that same 8,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor. And so we were able to get the quantity up. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, that's what it shows.
Yep.
On this next slide.
And so here the color changes to blue from this version, but that commercial space, is on both sides and really wraps all of Ash Street. And that's scenario 2, the senior building. And scenario 3 is a building that would get the family points from Maine Housing, which includes 10% 3 bedrooms. And so the apartments are getting larger, can't fit as many. We were able to get 64 apartments, but in doing so, we had to place some on the ground floor. And so the ground floor has, the orange is a single-family apartments on the backside. So we are trying to, most folks don't want to live on a busy city street. You don't really want your apartment there. You want your apartment in a private place where no one's walking by your window. So we are placing some apartments on the quieter backside, and then the commercial space runs along the front. And so we had to drop the number of commercial space, and the community room actually went to the corner at Ash and Bates. So our commercial space went down, our unit count went down. And so this scenario provided the fewest apartments, but it did have 3-bedroom apartments. So that was the 3 mixes. And I think this is really, one of the major areas we're looking for discussion with council about, where this vision goes. Talking internally, there's a general feeling that the Wedgwood construction is adding a decent amount of 3- and 4-bedroom apartments to Lewiston's downtown. Yeah, it's under construction right now. The DeWitt project will add 1s and 2s. It was a bit of a feeling of 3-bedroom apartments, maybe not the highest and best use for this project, because, you know, the unit count drops, the commercial space drops. It felt good having more commercial space along Ash and Bates, you know, to have more leasable area was, I think, a general internal feeling from our group. And then I think there's a debate between the senior and the 1s and 2, you know, the sort of 1s and 2s. Now, it's important to note, a senior can absolutely rent a 1 and 2 bedroom apartment. There's nothing about that first scheme that precluded seniors. Anyone can live there. But a senior building is 55 plus. So younger folks can't live there. But the seniors, of course, can and quite often do. They're one of the major renters of affordable housing because they have fixed incomes. So that's, I think, where we went with our general scenarios. Anything else before we open it up?
Yeah, so the option 3, the multifamily, you have the 1, 2, and 3 unit, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, right? So with 64 units, how many 3-bedroom units does that give you in that scenario?
We had 12, I think.
12 out of the 64 are 3-bedroom.
Yep. Because I think we had 3 per floor, as I look up, and we had 4 floors of housing.
I see.
So yeah, I think we had 12. Yep. We had 12, 3, and 12, and then 4 times 4. We had 16 2-bedrooms of that mix, in the 1, 2s, and 3 mix. There's such demand right now. There's demand for everything. I mean, we have Maine is apparently short 60 to 80,000 homes. So everything leases with the demand. So that's not the question, quite honestly.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I know you mentioned that seniors can certainly rent a 1 or 2 bedroom in a non-senior specific building. I just wanted to put out there that I've heard from some seniors who would prefer to have a 2-bedroom option. I know the typical is all 1-bedrooms, but I have heard from some who would like a 2-bedroom option. So whichever way we go, if we just keep that in mind.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
Councilor Najin.
One of the things. Whoa.
Please continue.
One of the things that stands out about the location and the considerations with parking as well is that generally you're looking at people who probably are a little bit more mobile. And so in that space, that would be, I would imagine, seniors that like to get around, as well as smaller families. It's one of those things that when I think about 3-bedroom apartments mixed in with like the commercial space in downtown, I think that can be challenging, to be honest. But I like the idea of the flexibility of the 1 and 2 bedrooms. I do think that's a hit, but I imagine it's going to depend on where you can get your funding from. One of the things that I got a chance to cheat on this because I was on the planning board when this came through the first time. But one of the things I would like to echo and reiterate, well, 2 things. One, when you think about central heating, think about central cooling as well. I think it's a major thing now that the world is much warmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that in the new Q app that Maine Housing is coming out, air conditioning is going to be a major part of it. So that's going to be something that we'll get points for including. So we're definitely tracking it.
Yeah, for sure. And when you see some of the developments where that wasn't considered, having window units, things like that, it can be challenging. And then the flexibility of the commercial space. I think you'll be hard pressed, at least at first, unless you have a good idea of the tenant that you're going to attract, to fill 8,000 square feet of space. So consider how that can be flexible in ways that, I could easily picture 1,500 square feet as a coffee shop or a lunch and eatery, especially in the location where it's at, but also right next door, maybe a dentist shop, right? Or an architect firm, something like that. So one of the things that I think we've missed in the past when we build out commercial space in some of these projects is not partnering with people who use commercial space, just making sure that the amenities are there making sure that it's flexible, and that's my feedback.
Yeah, that's
I think it's great.
That's a great point. You need flexibility of hair and nails, or coffee, or, it's like, yeah.
To echo what Councilor Najin was saying, yeah, we've had situations where there was commercial space as part of a residential building, and then not a lot of thought was put into who could go in there, and so on and so forth. And so, there, without getting into too many details, there was a situation where if things had been done differently, really at no cost to the developer, it might have been more rentable when it was done. And so just to really, to think about who could be in there, and then what kinds of space could be, what kind of tenants could be in there, and just giving some thought to that, I think, would go a long ways to actually making it marketable, and then having someone be in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the reasons that we're starting this public participation process so early, is to kind of poll the room and see if anyone has tenant suggestions or uses that they want to see in that space, and then we can try and build and design the space in that direction. And that's something that we can do. We can take advantage of starting this process early, is that we can incorporate that stuff into the final design.
Excellent. Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. I throw my 2 cents in, and I'd like to have senior housing. We have a ton of other housing going on, the whole Tree Street, all the things that are happening, and our seniors are still being left out. And the fact that they can rent something that somebody else can rent, they like to be around their own. They'd be in walking distance to the library, walking to the park, a lot of things. So, from my standpoint and the need, and we've talked about it here at the city a lot over the last couple of years, there is a lack of senior housing in Lewiston for those individuals who need it. So I would prefer to see something geared and earmarked in that area. And the same with the first floor. You could have a hairdresser, you could have the marketability for a small shop when you have seniors as clients really expands compared to maybe single family or apartment type situation. Thank you.
Councilor Chittum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I applaud you for starting this public hearing process early on. It's, in my view, unique, and I'm excited about this project. I tend to agree with, I think, your internal conversations that a 3-bedroom mix is probably not the best and highest use for this area. I know there are a lot of details that are going to have to be worked out as you step through the process. Planning board is going to have a lot of questions about it, the applicability of city ordinances, parking, for example. I think our ordinances specify so many spaces per bedroom or something, and so those wrinkles are going to need to be worked out, and you can certainly look to cooperation from this council in helping you do that. So thank you for bringing this forward. I'm excited about it.
Councilor Roy.
Thank you for bringing this to us. I mean, housing is needed. We really need this. Kind of like Councilor Gallant, I think it should be mixed in a lot of ways. I do feel like there's a lack of 1-bedroom available apartments. I work looking to find apartments for veterans and stuff like that, and the lack of 1-bedroom apartments anywhere in the city is unbelievable. Like, we can't find them. So I would like to see a mix. I do appreciate seniors, and I really think that that's needed too, but I also think that 1-bedroom apartments, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, I think would be ideal for this. My other question to this would be, utilizing the parking garage, and I might be putting the cart before the horse here, but is that gonna be rolled over into the rent? Are they gonna have spaces in the parking garages, or is that gonna be additional to what they are going to be paying per month?
Yeah, that's something that would have to be worked out. I think that from a zoning perspective, the number of spaces that we have to include is not high, but we do have to obviously include spaces sufficient for the ADA units. And just the amount of parking that we can have on the site and also have a building is limited. So if we have to do like a contract zone around the parking, or have like a stipend for tenants to use the municipal parking lot, that's something we'll have to take a look at it and hopefully work out ahead of time.
Administrator Hunter, did you have feedback on that question?
Yeah, just real quick on at least the parking garage aspect, I will share, because the closest parking lot would be the Ash Street, the Centerville. And the city is also receiving feedback, because we do have the senior housing on the other side of that garage, that they are wanting more dedicated spaces above what is required from a handicap standpoint. The other issue that we're running into is they want to be on that first floor because of, even though they may not be handicapped or have accessibility issues, just the sheer proximity due to age. So that would be things to keep take into consideration. We could work out a pass system similar to other development agreements, but one thing is we cannot, other than handicap spaces, we cannot dedicate spaces in a parking garage or a parking lot for any individual development because of the way we've bonded that.
Which brings me back to.
Yeah, please use the microphone, Councilor Roy.
Which brings me back to, with seniors and stuff, if they have to go a long way to get parking and stuff, it makes it kind of hard. So that was my thing, just keeping it maybe 1 and 2 bedrooms so, thank you.
Yep. And there's one last thing that I wanted to mention. It's not something that we need to talk about right now, but I wanted to sort of raise it as something that we might come before the council to ask for in the future, and that is the possibility of having a tax increment financing district for this project. I know DeWitt is doing one as well. Yeah, so this is something that would help the project financials a fair amount, and also provides us more points on the 9% LIHTC application. So this is just something that we would come before the council probably when we finish with the public participation process and are doing the design phase. We would come back to the council and start the process for having a TIF. But I wanted to just put it in your minds right now so that you'll know when we come back that this is something that we think we'll need for the project.
Councilor Najin.
One thing I'd just like to point out, when we do look at TIFs, there's also a considerable amount of street infrastructure that we need to look at as well. And that's something that I think the planning board has had limitations on, because the planning board holds the comp plan, but can only approve the lot space. And so when we're talking about development, it's also the infrastructure that we need to think about. And I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not saying anything about the TIF whatsoever. I'm just saying there's expenses concerning how we make the street work with the development in order to make it something that's pleasant for the entire community. So, right, and the residents.
So in February, there's going to be a stakeholder focus groups. Is that the community?
Yeah, that's correct. We have, I think, at least 2 scheduled, Craig, and then there's a final meeting at the end of February where we'll talk about what the final design of the project is likely going to be. But yeah, I think that's the setup.
That's right, yes. We have one meeting on the calendar with Healthy Neighborhoods. We have another meeting pending. We're waiting to hear back from the Downtown Lewiston Association about their best available date. And then we'll have the public meeting at the end of February.
And is one of the focus of these focus groups to get feedback on what people are looking for commercial tenants?
Yep.
Shops,
Yeah.
restaurants.
It'll be a similar presentation, and we'll guide the conversation. Will go where the attendees are interested in talking about. But yeah, especially at the meeting for the local businesses, we are especially interested to hear from them about ideas about commercial use for the space, prospective tenants. But any of these public meetings, we'd love to hear that feedback. And if folks want to reach out between the meetings because they can't make it to them, we'd like to hear from them one way or the other.
I know a lot of effort is spent talking to potential tenants about what they're looking for in a building, but yeah, I mean, I would love to. When the building comes online, we try to fill it as fast as possible with residential tenants. I would love to, have a game plan for all of the commercial spaces as well.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, definitely we would want that too, because that makes it much easier for us from a planning and financing standpoint. And, you know, it's something that we were trying to do with DeWitt, and I think have been moderately successful with that. And so we hope to have something similar, either, you know, several small businesses that we can slot into the 8,000 square foot space, or you know, maybe there's one big anchor tenant that we could find. I think it's more likely we'll end up with several smaller tenants. But yeah, the more we can know and talk to people ahead of time, the better for us.
I mean, my concern is that with many of the buildings downtown, they are profitable with just the residential tenants, and then commercial is just like, oh, we'll just see what happens, and so they go vacant for a long time, and it's not good for anybody.
Yeah, from a performa standpoint, it works much better if the commercial space is filled, so we're definitely going to be motivated to have that happen.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments from the council? Anything further from you three? We
Nope.
deeply appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We look forward to hearing more. I think we're ready, Administrator Hunter, with our informational discussion regarding downtown parking.
Sure.
Who is, okay, perfect.
Are you going to do it?
Step right up.
Exactly. So I do have team members behind me as well to help me with this topic, understanding that.
Do you have for team members behind you as
I
well? to help you?
have, if they're still here, okay. Kevin Gagney, who is the acting Public Works Director, and Louis Turcott, who is Facilities Manager. He always,
If you two can just come up and take these seats on either side of our administrator, so that way, if there's questions, we can, quickly move through them.
certainly.
Come on down. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
And if the three of you could introduce yourselves, that would just be wonderful.
Kevin Gagney, Deputy Interim Public Works Director, formerly, or soon to be formally, hopefully, Deputy Utility.
Louis Turcott, Facilities Manager.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Council, when this was asked to be on the agenda, it was designed to be council-led because they were ideas that you wanted staff to explore. So I envisioned this to be kind of a two-part workshop. One, to gather information tonight. We have members of the downtown. We've had both fire, public works, and police weigh in on some kind of general survey questions. We did look at doing a brief survey with the members of the downtown area on Lisbon Street, Ash to Main primarily. So we did get some feedback that I'd be happy to share. That survey was done, started Friday and finished today, so you do not have that in your packet, but that's something that we are willing to share as we move forward. Also, in your packet, and not necessarily to go over tonight, but just so you have background information, you have the two different parking studies the city has undertaken in prior years, just for background information to see what was recommended and help with that decision-making process. If I were to summarize at least what we're hearing, both from Public Safety, Public Works, and the downtown. I will start with Public Safety, Public Works. They are fully supportive of seasonal or temporary or strategic closures, but none of them are in favor of permanent closures because of the ability to get access to those if there were a fire, if there were patrol units that were needed, those types of things. And it changes the plowing mechanisms and equipment that we use if we would do that. We have successfully closed it for events and so forth. That doesn't mean we can't start doing that more. We just need to have staffing to do that. We need to have police to, on both sides of those barricades to not only keep cars out, but also if there was an emergency, to let those emergency vehicles in. Looking at the feedback from the downtown communities, essentially, they spoke to 18 organizations. 9 businesses said yes to close it permanently. 3 said maybe, and 5 said no. So that kind of gives you the breakdown. If you look kind of at industry, the no's were clearly in one particular industry as well as some of the nonprofits. As you might imagine, the hospitality industries tend to be more supportive of the closure of that area. I would venture to guess not only staff, but the downtown businesses as well. It's one thing to close this, whether it's a permanent close or a fixed or a temporary seasonal close, or however we end up working that. It's another thing to make sure that it is filled with activity, with vibrancy. Does it have, portable picnic tables? Does it have, those types of things? It is not sufficient straight up just to close it down and expect that organically it will happen. That will be a piece that, everybody's going to have to work hard to make sure that that activity is filled during those closures. So from a presentation standpoint, that's pretty much kind of giving you the up-to-date background information that we have once we heard, there was a desire to host this workshop. At this point, I would turn it over to the council and Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So what is, can you, for our benefit and the public's benefit, outline what the garage parking fee structure looks like, times that it's open? It's free sometimes, correct?
Yes. Do you have it?
Who's got that?
That'd be Louis.
So currently, when we set up the new equipment, we carried over the old fee structure from before, which is $6 for a full day. That's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. From 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. the night is free. 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 a.m. on Monday is free.
Okay. And is the first hour or two free, or how does that work?
So right now, any parking less than an hour is free. We didn't realize until one of the parking bans came up that if you park during the free period, say over the weekend, and you leave at 7 p.m., you get charged for a full day of parking plus the hour. That's the way the software is set up. We are working to change that. I've got the vendor working on the software application.
Okay. So it's free right now, starting at 6 p.m.?
Yes.
And then we start charging at 6 a.m. the next morning?
Yes.
And the first hour is free? Or is the first hour free, or if you get out before an hour, it's free?
So in general, less than an hour, if you pull in at 2 a.m. at 2 p.m. and leave at 2:55, there's no charge.
Okay.
So it's not the first hour, it's just less than an hour.
Less than an hour is free. Okay. And then how do people know that it's free?
Well, it's posted on the website, and we're working on updating signage at the garages.
Yeah, I mean, out-of-town people aren't watching on the website. So can we make, when it's free, can we make the gates go up?
The problem with opening the gates is they're there to collect data. So we prefer to have the gates down, collect the tickets, know who's coming in, when, what the counts are. But the case, they could go up, yes.
Okay. And so, well, and just to, I didn't want to ignore Deputy Administrator. What was, you were shaking your head, Mr. O'Malley?
Yeah, I was just shaking my head too about the gates, and that is the problem, trying to keep track of the the parking and the ticket. They take it and then they scan the ticket. It's not going to charge them, whether they're going to be able to get out for free. But if we don't have that data, we're trying to gather information since we've just gone to this new system.
Fair enough. Okay. And then for signage, what are we envisioning?
So right now, the signage covers almost everything except for clarification of the free period over the weekends. We could expand the signage right now to do more of maybe a lit sign that lights when the garages are free?
You're reading my mind.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people are gonna, we have this like sign with a bunch of data on it, like who's gonna even see that when it's night and it's,
And we've surveyed the sites, and it's hard to get the sign located so that you see it before you pull in, and that would be the goal.
right. Something very clear, like garage free now would be.
Exactly.
Would be helpful, just for the public driving by.
Yes.
Okay. That's enough questions for me right now. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So I remember back when this, the Walker Consultant parking study was done, and I think that a lot of the recommendations in there are good recommendations as far as shifting what we do right now. Some of the big things that I've heard are, it's hard to find parking downtown, but then people don't seem to know about the garages. So I feel like we need to create more signage to direct people to the garages, but then also incentivize them to park in the garages if they're staying for longer than 30 minutes or an hour. Because right now what we have is our highest value parking, which is on Lisbon Street, which is free and has a 2-hour limit. And that, having that limit also requires more enforcement too, because I've watched people park there all day long and they never get a ticket, just because no one drives by and enforces it. So if we could create paid spots, either paid or maybe a shorter time limit on those high value spots along Lisbon Street, and then perhaps increase the amount of free time you get in the garage, like maybe have the first 2 hours free, just to incentivize everyone who's staying for a meal or something like that to park in the garage. And then if you're just stopping to grab a cup of coffee or do something like that, then hopefully you'll be more apt to find an open space on Lisbon Street if those time limits are shorter. Possibly explore parking meters there, just to get people to shift the longer term people to the longer term parking.
Yeah, I think 2 hour, the first 2 hour free is going to really help our restaurants. I don't know what you're going to do in an hour. I just get coffee and then head straight back to your car. Yeah, absolutely. Councilor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't looking for permanent, so if I put it out the last time, I'll apologize. I was looking for something that would be consistent, though, that people get used to it. Every other week, something where they can start planning their activities and things of that nature, I think would be a way to do that. And the parking garage, I used to work over there with a congressman, and it can be frustrating to use. But can we get the local businesses, maybe on their slips, they give back to people to say there's free parking in the address? Let's get the word out when people go in and visit them, that I could have been, a block down the street and parked for free, or I could have got off-street parking. Maybe have them help us promote our parking garage. Because I think it's a big problem once you drive by the road and you don't see it. You see the library, library, and it's like, now you gotta go all the way down, gotta circle back, or you don't even know there's a garage there. So, and I promote the idea as well as an activity, having some kind of a function, and maybe the businesses can get involved, where they can host something, once a month or something like that. Obviously, in the wintertime, it could be tough. You might get away with 1 or 2 winter activities, but I think during the summer, you could draw out some people, and there's a lot of people in this area who would like to go downtown, but the biggest, when I go down, I can't find a place to park. It's pretty quick to just get down to the end of Main Street and say, well, I'm gonna go right and head over to Auburn, where I know there's plenty of parking for the restaurants and places I wanna go to. So I wanna try to promote something where people can do that. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond real quick? So at your first meeting, you approved an increase of a grant. You might recall it went from $150,000 to $200,000. Part of that grant it's part of the Village Partnership Initiative, and Kevin can talk a little bit more about that. It's a Maine Department of Transportation grant. What that it's going to evaluate, this is one of the corridors that it will evaluate. It'll allow us to then ask questions, say, okay, I think, Councilor Najin has said, if you're coming out of a parking garage, it would be great to have kind of, you are here, you are X amount of steps to Lisbon Street, you know, and have kind of that, whatever the color you choose from a walkway, getting you to Lisbon Street or having greater direction. Once we go through that planning process and we can incorporate some of this, some of these ideas into that study, and then makes us eligible for a rather larger pot of money to allow MDOT to help us with some of these changes that we're looking at making. Likewise, we are pursuing some upgrades, a grant to upgrade for electric vehicles. Part of that electricity then looks at how we're going to, you know, mark those spaces. It gives us a different conduit, literally and figuratively, to advertise and do those monitors on, you know, which garages, where we are. At some point, we're gonna have to talk about, instead of using the old-fashioned parking meters, because very few people carry quarters and our meters only take quarters, do we look at a kiosk system? And part of that kiosk system just opens the door wide open for advertising, to advertise the museums in the streets. They advertise the, you know, the downtown art, the public art. And, you know, you can even pick what path. Are you interested in X? Press this button and that lights up. Are you interested in Y? That, do you want to do a beer crawl? Press that button and it'll show you all of that. That's the wave of the future that we need to start looking at, and we need to decide how we go about doing that. What's that first step? This corridor and this grant allows us to really start taking a hard look at that. And do we start, you know, squirreling money away so by the time that study is done, we are ready to implement?
Councilor Najin.
So I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to start with the 2-hour validation, right? So instead of actually having validated tickets at the parking garages, if we had a 2-hour period in which it was free to park, I think that would be supportive of the downtown businesses, considering the conversations that we're having about expanding some of the commercial space onto, for instance, Ash Street. One of the challenges I think that we run into is connectivity from our parking areas to our commercial areas. And so in that, not only wayfinding, I think is incredibly important, but also making those passageways easy to navigate, ADA accessible, well lit, and breaking up this, because in all honesty, Park Street and Canal Street are both commercial corridors, right? There are ways to get to Lisbon Street from Park Street and Canal Street, but it's not always clear. So a little investment in making those connections more inviting, really. The parking garages, when you pull into the city, it's very difficult to, like, you don't know that where the parking garages are if you're on Main Street, for instance, right? If you get on Canal Street, you don't know where Sonnerville parking garage is until you're on it. So like just thinking about, again, wayfinding to the parking garages themselves. And as far as enforcement is concerned, so this is an issue that I think is something that most people would be aware of if they spend any time downtown. The vast majority of the parking is taken by people who live or work downtown. And so when we do enforcement, we have to think about the ability to enforce outside of the regular, parking piece. Like, I don't know if that's something that could be tacked on within, I don't know how it could be managed, but ultimately getting people who live at the Hartley block or the Coin Building out of those commercial spaces, while the bars are open, for instance, or the night dining is open, it's one, a revenue generator in the form of fines, and two, it's for people to come to our downtown, whether they're coming from other communities or they're coming from the suburbs. It's to support the businesses. And I think that piece would be really big. And to the point of closing Lisbon Street, one thing I just want you all to think about is programming. So ultimately, there's no sense in closing Lisbon Street if there's no programming for it. And so when we think about when to close Lisbon Street and how it would work, you know, like one of the things that sticks out right now is like Sundays and Mondays are slow days, right? And so, and I'm not suggesting that you approach the farmer's market and be like, hey, set up on Sundays downtown, but something that would be consistent, that would be many small hands, that is commercial, that would bring people downtown, could work. You know, we don't close Lisbon Street when we have the Friday art walks. You know, the Dufresne Plaza, now that it's redone, could probably be better used by having, like, let's say, a performance once a month, maybe even like, you know, the Monmouth Theater or another group, having movies shown there. Anything of that nature where you're not necessarily closing Lisbon Street, but you're creating an activity that's going to bring people down, and then allowing the businesses some leniency as far as being able to do pop-ups on the sidewalks. I think that would be something that, you know, we have lease space, or not lease space, but permit space in order to put like little cafes out and stuff. But if you're having an event where, you know, maybe it is just like a beer garden pop-up that's an extension of your restaurant, or, you know, anything of that nature where you're activating that sidewalk, but you're not necessarily closing down everything. You know, just starting there, I guess, you know, and kind of giving the businesses the opportunity to fill that space with what, you know, because I think the honest truth is, you know, 9 businesses are like, yeah, close it down forever, and the city's going to create all the programming in order to fill it. And so you need there's a large space where it's unoccupied at the moment, and so if we're closing it and we don't have programming, it's just going to be empty space. And so, but that's.
Yeah, I certainly support the closure of Lisbon Street when it makes sense, you know, for special events, so on and so forth. But I think just to close it now, yeah, I do not support that. Councilor Chittum?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that closing Lisbon Street when there is programming there, and I'm thinking specifically of art walks and the Sparkle Sunday, Sparkle Saturday, that has successfully occurred for the past 2 years, is it? Closing Lisbon Street makes a lot of sense there. I have unfortunately been hosting sidewalk events when Lisbon Street hasn't been closed, and that seems to be an attractor for every unmuffled pickup truck and loud blaring stereo within a 10-mile radius. So closing Lisbon Street when there is a specific purpose to do it would give us the experience on how do we reroute traffic. Both of the streets that parallel Lisbon Street are one way the wrong way. So I would look to Mr. Gagne and his department to come up with traffic plans that make sense. How we do that. Does Park Street become two-way? Does Canal Street become two-way? What happens when you reach Ash Street if Ash to Main is closed? Where do you go? I want to go over to Auburn. How do I get there? Oh, and I don't want to go to Auburn. I want to go up to Main Street. I'm sorry about that. So traffic planning obviously plays a big part in this. And again, to iterate, please don't close Lisbon Street for the purpose of closing Lisbon Street. Please close it when there is an opportunity and a need to do so. I'm all in favor of that. We may learn some valuable lessons from it. This has been a wide-ranging conversation because we started talking about closing Lisbon Street, and of course that bleeds over into the parking garages and the parking situation and the 2018 studies that were done for parking meters. All wonderful things, but I think we might be better focused on one or two of them at a time rather than trying to solve all of the vehicular transportation problems in downtown Lewiston all at once. Thank you.
Further comments from the council about parking? Councilor Ehrman?
I guess I'll just reiterate that it seems like a lot of people don't know about the parking garages, and they think there's no parking downtown because they drive down Lisbon Street and all the spots are full. So if we could somehow, I don't know, if we direct the people coming in on Lisbon Street to the Centreville garage and people coming in from Main Street to the Oak Street garage with better signage, that I think that could be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we have enough poles downtown that we could put, signage on. I mean, Portland does it. I was in Boston recently, and and every time someone says there's no parking downtown, I push back on that instantly. We have 4 parking garages. I mean, I don't think you can park in any one of the. There's no place downtown where you're not just a few minutes walk away from a parking garage. In fact, you can go to Walmart and on a busy Sunday park far at the end. You're going to walk far more than you would here in downtown Lewiston. We have plenty of parking. Councilor Najin.
I just wanted to point out something that I've noticed since living in Lewiston. There's like a, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but there's almost like an aversion to parking inside the parking garages from people in this community. One of the things that stands out is I think about people I know that go to DeMillo's, right? And they'll park at the DeMillo's parking lot, and then they'll leave DeMillo's and then drive to the Gendron Center, the Franco Center, right? And there's a parking garage in between the two, and you could easily just walk between the two. And it's the same thing with the farmers market spaces. That area gets filled completely with cars, and people will park in the open spaces that is a farther walk than the Lincoln Street parking garage, because. It's a funny thing, but I think basically parking garage education, being able to be like, hey, it's safe to put your car here. Nothing bad's going to happen. You can get it back out. Yeah.
Councilor Chittum.
Thank you. As the recipient of several parking tickets, I can say that enforcement is in fact being done on Lisbon Street. I have also gone to Centreville Garage and found that there are no spaces available until you get up to the roof. So yes, the parking garages are here, and I'm pleased to hear that we're beginning to collect data. We have not collected data in the past on utilization of the parking garages.
The software that we had was significantly archaic and not good at retrieving data.
Okay, well, I'm glad to see that, because we may find that despite the fact that we're advertising all kinds of parking garages in the downtown area, they may be fully utilized. It's been my experience on a couple of occasions that Centreville, at least, has no space available.
You're saying even the roof was full, the roof was available?
No, the roof was available.
Okay. Further comments from the council? Anything further from you three?
Nope, I will jot down these and put some semblance of order to them and just talk to staff and see what we can accomplish.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Administrator Hunter, we are moving into an executive session.
That's correct. I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Section 4056A, to discuss a personnel matter.
So motion, please.
So moved.
Councilor Najin, followed by Councilor Chittum. All
All
in
those
favor?
in favor? Yeah. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lewiston. We're heading into executive session, and we will are not coming back this evening. Have a wonderful night.